How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the video. If you've been wondering how to set your freestyle windsurf gear up to optimize your progression on the water, then this is the video for you. So let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing we do when we arrive at the spot is we grab our board. There's kind of three things that we can adjust on our board. We've got our foot straps, we've got our mast track and our fin. So we're going to look at how we can adjust those separately. Let's start with the foot straps. So it's important that you have a board with inboard foot straps. So that can be a freestyle board, it can be a wave board or a freestyle wave board. The reason being that we need to be inboard and over the board in order to pop and get airborne for our first freestyle maneuvers. When we're setting up our foot straps, there's two main goals: comfort and safety. Obviously, we're twisting and rotating a lot, and so we don't want to ever be stuck in the foot strap. So for this reason, I always recommend having your foot straps very narrow, but very tall. The narrow base allows your foot to be locked into the foot strap for when you're popping the board. But when you do crash, or if you crash, you can then roll your whole foot around in the foot strap so that you can easily get out of the foot strap. Foot straps are very personal. We've all got different feet. So what I like to do is start by matching the holes up to get the distance between and the narrowness, and then I can adjust from there. So a good tip is to start second from front, and then you can adjust accordingly. If you want a little bit more flexibility in your adjustment, what you can actually do is in a lot of the foot straps, there's this insert inside, and you can flip this around. This is essentially like half a whole jump instead of a full one, which will give you that flexibility to find the perfect setup for you. The next thing to think about is the width of your stance. So where your back foot strap position is and your front foot strap position is. This is kind of personal preference depending on your size and stature. For example, if you're a smaller person, you might want to have your foot straps at the back, at the front, and at the front on the back, so that they're nice and narrow, depending on your stance. On freeride or slalom boards, the position forward and backwards can affect a lot of the performance. However, in freestyle, I really think it's important to prioritize comfort over everything as we're going for these aerial maneuvers. Going back to the height of the foot strap, not only is it really important for safety to help you get out of the foot strap, but it's also really important to help you get over the center line of the board. It's going to mean that when you come out of your rotations, you're going to be more likely over the board, but also helps you apply pressure from rail to rail so that you can help with initiations of moves like shackers and flackers. A little quick tip: when you're first putting your foot straps onto the board, make sure that the Velcro flap is facing backwards. This way, when water's flowing over the board, it's not going to slowly wear away at the Velcro, and it's going to make your foot straps last a lot longer. Just below the back foot strap then is obviously our fin. Now, if you're not on a freestyle board, this is something you might want to change, as we want smaller fins for freestyle. The reason being, it's easier to get out the water, and then it's also easier when you're sliding to spin around without getting stuck. A rough range of what you're looking for is anywhere from 15 centimeters as a real smallest, up to about 22 to 24 centimeters. Picking your fin size can come down to three main things: the conditions you're sailing, the size of your board, and your level of freestyle. In choppy conditions, you're going to want a slightly longer fin, as you're going to be bouncing around a little bit more, whereas the glass flat conditions at places like Brouwer's Dam or Bonaire, you can get away with smaller fins to help you with those fast rotations. The size of the board is a factor. The bigger and wider the board, the bigger the fin should generally be. And finally, your freestyle level really dictates the size of fin you want. If you're looking for those sliding moves, a shorter fin is going to help with that. Whereas if you're looking to progress into the power move category, then you're going to want a little bit more lift and pop that extra fin is going to provide you. All of these factors can affect the performance of your freestyle. So I really recommend getting a few fins and experimenting to see what you prefer best and taking it from there. Obviously, we are all freestylers and we love showing off in front of our fans on the beach. So if you do happen to hit the bottom with your fin and you get some cracks, simply just sand the leading edge down so it's nice and smooth, and that will help keep those rotations nice and fluid. Finally, on the board then, let's touch on the base plate position. So all brands tend to have a little guide, and you go from there. It's important when you put your base plate in that it's the middle of the pin. You're not taking it from the leading edge of the disc or the trailing end of the disc. The main trade-off between moving the base plate forward and moving the base plate back is the difference between control and speed. So moving it slightly further forward is going to give you a little bit more control, and moving it slightly further back is going to give you a little bit more speed. The reason being is that you will have the mast foot pressure further back, which means that there is less board in the water, which is less resistance to the water. Moving it further forward ever so slightly is going to put more board in the water, which is again going to give you more resistance and just slow you down a little bit if you're starting to get overpowered. It's really important for me to emphasize that moving just 1 or 2 centimeters forward or back will make a huge difference to the performance of your board. So really tweak it slowly and experiment backwards and forwards to see what suits you best. Now that you've set your skate up for success, let's move on to the sails. When you're just getting into freestyle, it's really important to know that you don't necessarily need a designated freestyle sail. If you have a wave sail at home, or you're a wave sailor already that doesn't have any waves around, you can really make the most of your freestyle sessions with a wave sail. That's why I've got the Superhero here from Duotone and the Idol, and we're going to rig both side by side to see how you can get the most out of your time. The main difference between a freestyle sail and the wave sail is the pull is in a very different place. It's a lot higher on the freestyle sail, which is going to help you go into your moves. But for the basic sliding moves, you can really get away with a wave sail, and it's a great way to start out. When you rig your sail, it's good to rig to the guided numbers provided on the bag or the bottom of the sail. But remember that this is just a rough guide, as different masts and stretch of the sail over time can really affect the performance. So we're going to try and base our tuning on feeling, and we'll get that from affecting 3 things: the downhaul, the outhaul, and the battens. First one to look at is the downhaul, and a good guide to look at the downhaul is our leech. Now, it's quite well known that freestylers want a tight leech because it means that the power is stored at the top of the sail, which helps throw us forward into the rotations that we're doing. If our sail is also tight at the leech, it means it's much easier to go neutral when we're ducking the sail. This means that when we duck, it's less likely to just flop in the water, and the sail will stay stable even when we're putting it through the apparent wind. If you are using a wave sail, then this is the moment when you ignore the numbers and you start to crank on a little bit less downhaul. You see that they have the stickers for the max and minimum. I would come right below the minimum so that you get that same forward pull as you would get with a freestyle sail. Again, like your mast track, small movements and small margins make a big difference. So that's why I really actually enjoy using the XT extension, because while I'm on the water, I can plus or minus 1 or 2 centimeters at a time without having to deal with all the rope and coming into the beach. So after the downhaul, the next thing we're going to look at is the outhaul of the sail. This is how tight the sail becomes. Now, it's not uncommon at all for a freestyle sail to be touching the other side of the boom. The reason being is we want the maximum amount of power to give us that energy to rotate us into the maneuvers that we're going to be doing on the water. It's good to know that when you tighten the outhaul, you actually also tighten the leech. So as you're doing one, make sure to look at the other so that you are keeping a good guide on what's going on with your sail. Again, on the clue of the sail, there are numbers that are going to be your guide. This really can vary depending on if you've got your boom right at the bottom of the cutout or at the top. So make sure you do it on that feeling and get to know the pressure in your sail first before you then adjust straight to a number. You'll see on the Duotone Idol that we have 2 eyelets in the clue. This is the top one is for your freestyle on your fin, and actually the bottom one is for foil style. I would always recommend, if you're on the fin, keeping it to that top one, unless you're a slightly smaller rider, and then you can keep the angle of the boom nice and level when you've got the boom at the bottom of the cutout. The last thing to talk about then regarding the sail is the battens. You want the bottom 2 battens to be loose. This means when you duck the sail, they're going to be nice and flat, leaving the sail neutral, making it easy to duck. The top 2 you want opposite. You want them nice and tight so that the leech remains nice and tight. Again, good for neutrality when ducking the sail. Something to note is once you've set up the battens, that's not the end of it. Your sail can stretch over time, so it's important just to keep an eye on it and see if they come loose or tighter. A good indicator to see if you've done your battens correctly is the creases on the sail. Now, if there are some at the bottom of the sail, that's not the end of the world. That's actually quite common. But at the top of the sail, you want to make sure they're nice and tight so that that sail is nice and flat. With all that in mind, you've now put yourself in the best position to go and land your first moves or progress and level up the moves you've already got. Thanks so much for watching the video. If you like this type of content, please feel free to subscribe and share with your friends. And we've got plenty more coming on the channel. See you soon.